We are live. Okay, hold on.
Hello.
Okay, yes, we're live. Okay, welcome
Hello,
everybody.
all you chemists out there.
Welcome.
I can't hear you, Wilson.
Oh, okay. Well, what do you mean you can't hear me? Can you hear me?
For some
Well,
reason, I've lost audio.
you've lost audio. Okay, we had audio. Hey, Daniela, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got a sign here.
Lost audio. Okay, let's see.
Can't hear you
Maybe
guys.
yeah.
Not sure what
Interesting.
happened.
Okay, can you
Can you
try
hear
log?
me?
Yes. Can you try log in again?
Uh,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I know. Let me see. Try logging in. We're having technical difficulties, people. So, hang on.
Try logging in again. Okay. All right. I'm gonna leave for a second.
Right.
I don't know what to do here. Let's see.
A little technical difficulties. We even we were just talking before, and he was hearing it fine, and then all of a sudden, we lost audio. So hopefully, when he comes back, we'll get that resolved. But thank you everybody who is out there for joining us. This is episode number 8 of the Chemist Corner, where we talk about atoms and molecules and the people who love them. And so when Ivan comes back, I'll introduce him, and he can tell us about all his background and the stuff and all of the chemical knowledge that he accumulated over several decades of industrial experience.
Okay.
Okay.
Looks like. Am I on? Can you guys
Yeah,
hear me again?
yeah. Can
All
you hear it?
right.
Can you hear
Sorry.
it?
I just when we started like 4 minutes ago, I suddenly lost audio and I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Really?
So
Well, okay. Okay.
sorry
Well,
about
I'm glad
that.
glad you're here. So I was just saying, introducing kind of the program. So this is the Chemist Corner, where we talk about atoms and molecules and the people who love them. This is episode number 8. So today I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Ivan Lorkovic, who is has been a friend of mine for the past 20 years. We've worked at several companies together. And he's one of the smartest guys I know. So I'm really happy to have him today on the show. Ivan, why don't you just give a little brief introduction about yourself, where you're working currently, how you're interacting with molecules in your present job?
Okay, so I'm no longer I no longer have the title of chemist, but I am a systems engineer at Raytheon Vision Systems. We make infrared focal planes, visible focal planes, ultraviolet focal planes. So there's, as a chemist, one of the holy grails, the things that a lot of chemists try to do is to separate charge. So do photosynthesis the way plants do, except recovering energy in different ways. Plants make oxygen and they create energy through carbohydrates, uh, basically from the sun. And so that sort of thinking is also what drives being able to detect light, not just use it as an energy source, but be able to detect light. It's kind of the same principles that we use to develop and understand focal planes for all kinds of applications. So some of these applications are weather satellites, which are out there measuring the chemistry of the world, essentially, and other sorts of applications, detecting heat. So that's kind of what I do. But I made the jump in 2005. I was doing a lot of chemistry research up until then. And then in 2005, and I had an opportunity to work on a new weather satellite called VIIRS that was being developed in Santa Barbara. And so I switched careers and stayed with the company after jumping around a little bit, but lucky to stay there.
Can you explain what a focal plane is and kind of
Okay,
what
so a focal
it
plane,
involves?
it's, your eye has a retina. Your eye detects an image that is focused on your retina by your lens in your eye. And that retina then reports the image to your brain, and you can see stuff, right? You can see sharp things, you see sharply if you don't need glasses. But a focal plane is essentially an electronic retina that creates images so that we can see in remote places. So we don't have to be up in space. We can have the focal plane see the image through a telescope of whatever it's looking at. But the focal plane is essentially where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, where light gets turned into electrons that can be detected and digitally processed and then sent to Earth the way television is sent around, like with advanced communication. But it's essentially detecting photons and turning them into digital signals.
Right, right. And what's
Um,
and then as a in your job as a systems engineer, what is involved in what are your roles and responsibilities?
Well, there are so many things that we have to prove that our sensors can do, and those are enumerated in requirements, and all those requirements have to have proof. So if you're building something that you want to be sent up into space, there's one of these things in the world, and you have to prove to the people who are paying for it that, yeah, it does all these things, it's not going to fail, it's going to last however long the mission lasts. So all these things require a detailed understanding of the chemistry, of the physics, of um, the heat dependence, the thermal, how much do you have to cool it to get the signal out? Because a lot of these things only work when they're cooled. How do you cool it? Like how much power does that take? How much does it weigh? Because we got to put it on a rocket. Will it break apart when the vibration of the launch happens? All these things have to be tested, and it's a really arduous set of testing that has to happen that I kind of manage as a systems engineer and
Hmm.
understand. I'm supposed to understand. The stuff that I rely on so much expertise. All the people I work with are experts in specific things, and I don't have to so much understand them as to know who understands them, and to have those people in the room, and then also to make sure that we don't lose that understanding when people retire, as they inevitably do. So it's just kind of a maintenance of know-how
Right.
that has to happen.
Well, so
And
it
we
seems, yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I mean, no.
And
My
so
question
what
is that
I want to say that the tie-in for me to why I considered myself valuable or worthwhile where I work now is because a lot of the things that we make, these infrared sensors, these are things that chemists use every day. And if you've ever taken an infrared spectrum, chances are you've used a mercury cadmium telluride detector, the kind that you have to pour liquid nitrogen into um, to see the infrared radiation, much the same way a solar cell can see visible light and get energy out of it. With these MCT detectors, the band gap, the sort of energy associated with detecting that longer infrared light, which is essentially heat, it has to be cooled because at room temperature, there's so much excitation going on that it's basically, it turns into a conductor at room temperature. You have to cool it down. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling on and
no,
on,
no, no.
but that's what I do.
That's what we're
That's what
here.
I do right now.
That's why we're here.
Uh,
We're here to talk about molecules and and how you
but
interact with them. Go ahead.
I'm one of those people. I've been in chemistry for so long, and I've seen the field change, and I basically love all science, and I love arguing, especially about science, because without arguing, there pretty much is no science, because like nobody will ever test a theory that you might have. You pretty much have to argue about things all the time, and I happen to love arguing, so that's because you hear somebody say something and it's like, oh, this is why this happens, and you're like, I don't think so, like, because it doesn't. If you have to come at it from 10 different ways, and if it all makes sense, if it all holds together, if it's all internally consistent, well, yeah, maybe that's the answer. But generally, there's a lot of misinformation out there because everybody wants their theory to be right, and so my job is to kind of disappoint them. And often, like I'd say 95% of the time I disappoint myself, or am, people will prove me wrong, and it's really embarrassing and horrible. But those are the things that I will never, ever forget. Those experiences where I had something wrong, expressed myself, and when I was shown to be wrong, it's the greatest way to learn something, because that pain of embarrassment, you just never forget it. And so a lot of the things I've learned have come painfully that way. And I think if there's any people that I've worked with in the past, um, they remember those those occurrences.
Yeah, and I happen to think that's one of your most one of your more charming qualities. The so the what's I mean, besides that kind of the scale of kind of questioning, what are the skills you think you utilize at work that are necessary for?
Oh,
Uh,
just
yeah.
all math, like just the history I've had of just the math and the science and the research. And I I was doing research in college. I went to this college in the Midwest called Grinnell College. I was really lucky to go there. My mom basically shipped me there and says, "Hey, you got to go here. It's a good school." And they had a really great science and especially chemistry department. And and I kind of just took to it and went with it. And it's I've always liked chemistry. I was for some reason in high school, being sort of a geek, they said, "Oh, this guy doesn't need to take biology. Let's just put him straight into chemistry." So I was a sophomore in high school taking chemistry with a bunch of juniors. And I don't know why they thought these people who were guiding me thought that biology was somehow expendable, because it's really lacking in my knowledge. It's just because I never took it in high school. But it I really loved chemistry even back then. And I had a great teacher, Malcolm Gore, Iowa City High School. He also taught in his younger year. I think he's probably deceased by now, but he also taught a Nobel Prize winner by the name of Thomas Cech 15 years before he taught me chemistry. And not only has Tom Cech won a Nobel Prize for RNA catalysis, but also has trained other Nobel Prize winner, among them the inventor of the CRISPR gene editing technology, Jennifer Doudna. And so this is all came from my high school chemistry teacher. It isn't,
Isn't that
which
something?
I find that amazing. Anyway,
Anyway,
just
yeah.
kudos to all the people that I just want to. I wish I could just enumerate all these people that I worked with, because they worked really hard and they took it really seriously and tried hard to teach. And they taught me. So
Yeah, and that you were fortunate in having kind of people support you. I wanted to ask you in terms going back to Raytheon. Can you tell us how you got that job at Raytheon?
I had a friend who got the job before I did, and I guess knew that I was sort of an analytical person and would fit in, and most importantly, I think benefited financially from me being hired there. And so she I don't know if you know Mina Matani. She was a grad student at UCSB and knew some people out at Raytheon, and months before I got there, got hired, and then they were really in under stress to hire more systems engineers and analysts, basically, because they kind of got behind schedule. It was the first iteration of the satellite, this new sensor that they were making, and they were behind schedule, and it was getting a lot of visibility in Congress because they were spending a lot of money on it. And so they were desperate to get things going, and that's when I got in because
Mhm.
they were desperate. so,
Plus,
so I
plus you knew, yeah,
so I
plus,
here's this chemist out of nowhere got a job as a systems engineer. But again, it's because I had so much experience. I like to think it's because I had so much experience analyzing data. Like that is what you do when and I that sounds like sort of fancy and highfalutin or whatever, but it's essentially just, you know, you have something that tells a story. Does the story make sense? That's, and you know, you can apply it in any sort of everyday experience. Um, you know, whether it's what works when you're trying to grow a vegetable in your garden, which I'm failing at currently, and or you know how to fix your bicycle, or how to cook something, how not to burn it, like what makes it turn out the best, how long do you got to cook it before you can eat it and not get sick from it. I mean, these are all like, that's all science, and it's all analysis, and you got to figure out like, well, what's the temperature, how do I measure that, how do I keep track. It's just everyday stuff. And but in the field of, you know, when I was working in the lab, it was kind of a specific set of those kind of activities, and applying my scrutiny, like what's really going on here? How can I make this work? That experience led me to uh, be comfortable with a lot of the techniques that I would use at the place I work now. Just basically the kind of instruments that we use and how they work. So how
mhm.
does, you know, how does a spectrometer work? How does a NMR uh, uh, spectrometer work, nuclear magnetic resonance? It's like all these different things with different, you know, one uses a magnet, one uses a optical system, one disperses light with, if it's Fourier transform, then all the light comes through at once, and you sort of, all these things you have to sort of understand mathematically, and I spent a lot of years doing that, and being fascinated by it, and so I was kind of lucky uh, that I liked it. And anyway,
So can you kind of expand? I mean, you mentioned that you liked science. Do you remember kind of your earliest, totally your earliest memories in which you kind of decided you wanted to be a scientist?
well, so my dad was quote unquote a scientist, and he used to work with muscles and nerves. And he came to my fourth grade class once and dissected a worm, and everybody thought that, number one, it was really gross, but they thought it was really cool too. And so, and he's
Mhm.
like, he's trying to explain to these fourth graders, oh, where I'm dipping it into ions of potassium and calcium, and we're like, ions, what's an ion? So, and I used to go, like, just after school, I'd have to like follow him into his lab, and he'd be in there with his solutions and his test tubes, and he used to mouth pipette. I don't know if people do that anymore, but he did it. And so in other words, he'd measure out certain volumes to know, like, you know, how salty is this solution, but he'd measure it by sucking the solution into a bulb by using his mouth, sort of like a straw, and then dumping it into the. And I watched all this stuff. He used to make things twitch and follow them on a oscilloscope, and those are my sort of earliest observations. But then there was just my school. I lived in a university town, and like Santa Barbara's a university town too, and there are all these programs for kids to get to tour the laboratory, or to go on a trip to the Science Museum in Chicago. I remember doing that in seventh grade and getting in big trouble because I took off from the group and just walked around downtown for a while. I was, yeah, but all these things were really great opportunities, and you know, between sort of my mom pushing me and just being interested in general, it just there was I kind of always knew. I didn't. I have to say I never had to make a decision. It was just kind of like there for me, and I know that's not true of everybody, and I respect people who actually see something, they're not sure what it is, and they decide and they take a risk and they go do it, and then eventually, after suffering a little bit, they they like it. And I with chemistry, I just never had that. It just was always open to me. I just flowed into it. But that's not a general experience for everybody. Usually you have to
Mhm.
like work at something and not be good at it, but then sort of if there's some spark where you figure something out, then you're hooked and you just keep doing it.
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, perfectly. Let's talk about kind of after when you were at Grinnell and you were kind of deciding what you were going to do after. Did you know you
yeah.
want to go to graduate school? And can you tell us how kind of what how you got accepted to MIT, or what was that process like?
Okay, so I again, this isn't everybody's path, and I don't know if it's a good path, but I liked chemistry. I did it a lot. I did summer research. We eventually, after a lot of struggle, figured out this system that we were looking at. That sort of I did organometallic chemistry. So there was a chemist, a famous chemist at Northwestern named Fred Bisolo, and my advisor at the time, Richard Biagioni, was trying to reproduce and elaborate on some of the work that he did with this so-called ring slip chemistry, where but I don't think I have the time to go into it, but it's understanding how reactions can be made faster and easier because you have one of the things that's attached to a metal can kind of flop around and allow other things to come in while still holding on. And sort of make things facile and not be just sort of stuck on where the molecule doesn't do anything. You have to heat it up, and then when you heat it up too much, it'll just decompose. But this is sort of a special um, mechanism that Fred Basolo figured out. But he got one thing wrong, and that is in certain cases of ring slip, what can happen is the ring can just fall off as so-called free radical and leave the metal as also um, a radical species, which when you're trying to look at it using spectroscopy, it just looks different. And we didn't have any experience with looking at these un, uh, odd electron metals, and they just gave funny peaks that I never really understood. And then finally, we did some tests and realized that, yeah, it was doing this something that was mischaracterized previously. So essentially, there was a mistake. We corrected the mistake and wrote a paper about it, and it all went well. And it was I'm sort of trivializing by saying it that way, but it took took a lot of work. And when
Uh-huh.
we did figure it out, it was like, oh, we have this small window of conditions where we can actually stop the reaction before it breaks apart and characterize that. And you know, that was this paper that I wrote in undergrad. And then because I'd been doing all this chemistry, taking it and liking it, I took the GREs, which is sort of this. It's kind of like SATs for college
Mhm.
students. And so you take a chemistry GRE, which is like, how good are you at chemistry? And they like throw all these random questions at you. And because I did so well on the GRE, again because of all this experience and liking it so much, that's what got me into these schools. I don't think I had especially good grades. I had good grades in science, but I tended to overextend, and I actually I got an F in a philosophy class, this political philosophy that I just never understood, and it brought my grade point down so much. But luckily, these science grad schools were like, okay, we don't need philosophers, we want somebody in the lab, and so we're gonna offer this to you anyway. Yeah, so that's kind of how I get in, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna do lasers, and then I realized after a year being in physical chemistry that I didn't want to be tuning a laser for the rest of my life, which it seemed like I was gonna have to do that. And so I went into a lab that did more of the work that I had become comfortable with in undergrad, which used a wide variety of techniques and electrochemistry and organometallic chemistry, and basically this idea of chemistry as a tool to advance green energy. That was kind of one of the themes that we worked on in this lab that I was in. And after second year, I switched labs. If you're not happy in a lab, there's no problem switching. You just make that choice if you can have it. But I worked after the first year with really great Professor Keith Nelson in physical chemistry. I switched into inorganic chemistry, inorganic electrochemistry, working with a chemist by the name of Mark Wrighton, who had a huge group, well-funded, really dynamic personality, and inspired a lot of people. And I learned a lot from the people in his lab, and got through with the PhD.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't
Well,
easy because I've never been one to write in chemistry. You have to write proposals. You have to just choose something. You got to pick something and then read up all about it, find out everything there is to know, and then propose something new that might be interesting. And I was never very good at that. And I was always like, well, you got a problem, I want to solve it. And that's always been my mentality, is to like, let's solve this problem and do it. But if there's something that I don't do well, and I think maybe needs more practice with, is proposal writing, which is essentially coming up with an idea. It's like, another way to put it is like a business plan. It's like, oh, I'm going to start a new business and it's going to work because this, and this, and this. You sort of do your homework and you write it all down and you present it to people. And if you tell a good story, well, guess what? They'll give you money. And in the case of science, your business plan is your scientific proposal. And so if you have a good story and tell it well, and your documentation is nice and clear and it's interesting, they'll give you money to do it, and you're off and running. So
sounds simple, huh? We have a question from the audience, Ivan.
yeah.
What made you switch to industry if you enjoyed your work in the lab so much?
I'd say that it's because I just talking about writing proposals, and the sort of neglect that I had in that displayed to that particular part of my career meant that I was always going to be somebody's assistant and not really kind of the boss of my own fate. And I just realized that I didn't want to be that way for the rest of my life. And so I thought it was a good time to move on from working in a lab with somebody else for somebody else's proposal. And I mean, it was kind of my own. I own that I've never really spent time, as I said, not writing a lot of proposals. But what else did I want to say about that? Also, you know, when I got this job, it was like, well, it's something new. I'm going to do it. I'm going to find out how industry works, and I really didn't know how things got done in that kind of work. And I've learned a little bit more. But now when I go back to labs, I can't do it anymore because my eyes, I can't like look close at things. I need bifocals, which I don't have, and it's just the whole lab. The exposure to the different things. I didn't want to constantly be exposed to high levels of trifluoroacetic acid or bromine or whatever it is that just kind of gets to you,
Mm-hmm.
day by day. So yeah, it was time. I spent a lot of time in the lab. I spent probably 20 years in the lab. And you
Yeah,
said,
and
yeah.
and you've had quite a varied background. Well, we're nearing close to our allotted time. Just Ivan, just thinking about in terms of kind of what advice you would give to uh, kind of middle school or high schoolers contemplating a career in science as a chemist. Is there anything that comes to mind from you? Kind of your advice to the younger generation.
Stay in school.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come easy, and there's going to be times when you just don't get it, and especially the first time you're trying to learn something, and if you ask for help and do it, and just don't walk away, just give yourself time to not understand something for a while. Don't give up just because it doesn't come to you right away, because a lot of times the reason it doesn't come, these concepts are difficult, is because some people actually understand everything really well and they want it to fit into their picture. And so I'm sorry, I'm going over time, but you just
no, no,
give
go ahead.
yourself a chance. Give yourself a chance to be uncomfortable, and eventually you will become comfortable with it. And that's true of any new subject where you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this higher level of math. Well, if you don't give yourself a chance to be uncomfortable, you probably won't. You got to sit there and think about it for a while, and it'll come.
Okay, great words of wisdom. So
Okay.
thank you, Ivan. We appreciate your time. And yeah,
Yeah, I wish I could like give you like a tour of, and show you crystals and like explosions and things like that, but not today. So
okay,
it's always fun to
all
see
right.
that.
Well,
Thanks,
see you guys
Wilson.
next time. Take
Yeah.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.